Christel, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank, Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. It's fantastic to be here today.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. Christel,
Yeah.
for people who don't know who you are, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everybody. My name is Christel Buchanan. I'm the founder and CEO of Chat and Build and Pivotal. So, we're creating what I like to call a no-code social network. So, what we're trying to do is to essentially democratize software development by turning it from a technical skill into a creative and social experience that anyone can participate in. So, my journey actually started at Oxford, where I did my dual postgrad masters in AI and major program management. I was also the first, sort of one of the first employees for Twitter outside of the US, the 10th international hire. And I worked at Brandwatch, a consumer intelligence company, as the VP of Asia, brought it to Asia Pacific back in 2015. Can't believe it's about 10 years ago now. And I was also an early team member at Zilliqa, one of my favorite blockchain projects that revolutionized the concept of sharding. And I guess, in a sense, what has been really consistent throughout my career is, being able to build communities around technology. So I've always been fascinated by how technology can remove barriers and create new possibilities for people. That's what has brought me to this point. And I guess Chat and Build has really been a combination of that journey using AI to make software creation accessible to anyone, not just developers. But on the personal side, I guess I love running, cycling, swimming. Um, so I've done a couple of triathlons. I love painting as well, and yeah, helps me to kind of get a bit of perspective outside of the tech world, I would say.
That sounds cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I've got quite a few questions to deep dive into your career and yeah, ask you tons of advice. I'm sure you've yeah picked up a lot along the way. Um, I'd love to understand a little bit more about the roles that you've held in
Mm.
those different companies and projects along the way. If you could talk us through your journey as far as positions go, that's kind of led you to this point as a founder now.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Well, I think you can agree with me that, life is anything but linear. And I guess my path has certainly been the same. And I think, in a sense, that has been my greatest strength because, I've taken a non traditional path. So the fun fact is, at the National University of Singapore, where I did my undergraduate studies, I actually studied geography and not computer science or business. And that I think surprises a lot of people given where I am today and being in the tech world. And I guess during university, I actually faced my very first major career decision because I broke my government scholarship bond in my first year because my intuition was just screaming that this wasn't my path. I'm not meant to work, for the public sector. So I knocked on a lot of doors all summer when I was, I think, 18 or 19, and I landed a temporary job at an advertising agency. It's called Havas. A lot of my dear friends are still there till today. And then my new boss at the time challenged me that if my team could win a multi-million dollar, sort of social media account, I'll get a full-time role. So I guess what carried me through it at the time was a very thickened skin, a very fearless spirit, at least I think so, and copious amounts of Red Bull. And, we won the account. And that decision, I guess, completely redirected my trajectory. And a lot of that actually led to then me becoming one of Twitter's first 10 international employees. Because I met, a couple of people along the way internationally as well, in Europe, in the US. And that was when I helped Twitter, along with its founding team, establish their APAC footprint. And then after that, we also went to the Middle East and we went to Latin America. So it was really quite a journey for us. I secured the landmark Alibaba partnership with our then great head of Greater China that became one of the cornerstone partners and clients of Twitter's international expansion. And I guess, in a sense, the lessons that I learned from building these partner ecosystems in emerging markets became fundamental to everything I've done before. At Brandwatch, which was a consumer intelligence company. So I left Twitter to help Brandwatch open up their Asia Pacific offices back in 2015. That was in 2015. And I built their operation from zero to multi-million dollar annual recurring revenue in under 24 months, and we delivered about 300% year-on-year growth that outpaced all other global regions. So we had clients like Uber, Standard Chartered Bank, Samsung, etc., Telstra as well in Australia. So we focus a lot on strategic partnerships, and I think that also helped me understand how to, I would say, bring a global company to local markets. But what I will also share are some of the challenging periods throughout my career. So one particular part that not many people know about is I did a very short stint at Samsung, and this was just before Twitter. And within like it was like a first in first out situation. Within just, I would say, under 3 or 4 months, I was actually retrenched due to a corporate restructure. And I was at the time head of social business for Samsung, right? And I was in charge of looking after the joint business plans with Facebook, Twitter, and that was what I brought in to do. But I guess at that point in time, that experience actually taught me that the higher you rise, the harder you fall. But the harder you fall, the stronger you actually rise. So I developed a renewed sense of empathy that actually made me, I guess, in a sense, more understanding, be a better leader. And more recently, before I started Chat and Build, this was 7 years ago, I founded Boat OS, which is an immersive streaming platform from concept to enterprise. We secured partnerships with over 180 TV brands, and then I pioneered an AI-driven content personalization engine as well when I was at Boat OS. So bring all this back together. The combination of all these experiences is Chat and Build, which is we are creating a no-code AI platform that democratizes software development. What's I think really interesting about that is that we have also started partnering up with enterprises as well to kind of help them, develop MVPs faster, and that includes partners like Bloomberg and Hisense, for example. These are some of our pioneering partners of the Chat and Build ecosystem. So I guess in a sense, throughout this journey, what has been really consistent for me is seeing opportunities at the intersection of different domains, whether that's technology and media, AI and blockchain, or commerce and community. I've learned that success isn't just about mastering one skill perfectly, as you probably would agree with me as well, but it's about connecting the spaces between facts, and finding patterns that other people would miss. Yeah,
Nice. Well, I was going to ask you, which I'll ask you in a second, actually, about some challenges that maybe
sure.
surprised you throughout your journey so far. But before I do that, what was it like working at a business like Twitter in the very, very early days? I'm sure people would be
Oh.
dying to understand like what that was like.
Mm. It was really, really fun. I think if I hadn't gone on to start my own companies, I would have continued on helping, tech companies either go international, open up in, either Asia, Australia, and emerging markets. That would have been my career path, I would say, because I was good at
Okay.
that. At Twitter itself, it was absolutely crazy. Like, some of the stories that you have read in the press or what had happened with celebrities coming to the office, the great food, the great perks, it's all true, which is fantastic. But because you're a remote employee and you don't have all of the perks of San Francisco, you have to be really inventive. So one of my favorite stories was, when I first came in, I was in San Francisco for a couple of months at that point in time. Then we had to come to Singapore to open up the very first office, and then there was Japan and Australia, etc. But we were opening it up in service offices. And at one point in time, say in Indonesia, we were sharing an office with Facebook and Uber at the same time, which was hilarious.
Okay.
So, the clients would be coming in, right? And you'll see the same people coming in to see Facebook, and then they're going to see Uber, and then they're going to see Twitter. It was so funny. Yeah. So, I mean, I really enjoyed it. And, at one point, we had to bring in, we had to buy paint, right? Like literally Nippon paint, right? And paint the walls blue, install the printers, bring in
Nice.
all the computers, so it was really like it was almost like trying to build a startup but being
Mhm.
extremely well funded, beyond the realms of well funded. It's like an unlimited budget at one point. So it was really quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's quite fun, I guess, that being at that
Yeah.
point in the startup where you are having to paint the walls and put your own desks in and
Mhm.
stuff like that builds quite a, I don't know, quite a fun environment, maybe, or maybe
Yeah.
just I guess some people might not find that fun, but I think I would find that
Yeah.
quite fun. I guess it builds a bit of like camaraderie between the
Yes.
teams and stuff there. If you're kind of getting
Yes.
stuck in, having to do that sort of stuff
Yes.
to get the startup up and
Yeah.
off the ground. Um,
Yeah. I think
no,
to
that sounds
add
good.
on to that point, I think, a lot of why you would want to be in a startup, it's about trying to start a new culture, right? And that camaraderie and that shared experiences really deepens the bonds and kind of carries you through. Because if you're just in a startup because you want to make money, it's the wrong decision. Like going to a corporate and being strategic about it will make you a far better paycheck, right? You want to be in a
Yeah,
startup or be an entrepreneur is because you either want to have control over your time, you want to have a different sort of lifestyle, which is understandable for many people in this day and age, or you want the opportunity to have a say in your own destiny, right? And one part of it, I guess, is being able to create culture.
yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Um, were there any challenges that really surprised you
Mm.
throughout your journey so far?
Um, I would say that the professional journey, as I would say, is really not linear. So, in a sense, for me, based on chat and build, I think my biggest surprise, it wasn't technical, but it was more psychological, if you will.
Okay.
So, when you're building something that doesn't fit quite neatly into existing categories, I would say, there's this constant pressure to kind of simplify your vision to make it more understandable. So people want to
Mm.
put you into a box, right? And they will say, oh, it's just another AI coding tool, doesn't mean anything much, anyone can do this or whatsoever. But the truth is, a lot of what you want to do, especially as an entrepreneur, you got to think fast on your feet. You just got to get going, and you got to never give up, and you got to keep showing up every day. I think in the sense of my entrepreneurial journey so far, especially with why I'm so excited about Chat and Build, is that I fundamentally believe that as an entrepreneur, you need to be excited about being able to create something new at the intersection of several trends, and this requires holding on to complexity and nuance while still communicating very clearly about it. So I've spent countless late nights trying to refine how we explain about what we're building, without dumbing it down in a sense. And I guess adding on to that point, the other challenge that I have had is, realizing how much of a founder life is about intensity and endurance. I think it's some combination of trying to do, hit, like sort of like interval training while running a marathon straight after, and then you jump into an ice bath in between while you do arithmetic without a calculator. So sort of trying to do everything all at once. And I've had weeks of like 16-hour days non-stop, right? Like Mondays to Sundays, split between coding, gym breaks, trying to get everything organized in the company just to stay sane. So the startup journey isn't always glamorous, but I think seeing users create things they never thought possible for us, it makes it all worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. How do you This might be quite a difficult question, but
Yeah.
how do you learn how to juggle that many plates at once? Is it just trial and error and you just kind of
Yeah.
have to learn, otherwise you'll fall apart?
Yeah.
Or do you think it's a combination of just skills you build up over time? Like, what do you think?
Yeah. I think one thing that I have learned, which is, I would say, an immutable truth at this point, is that you would always be busy and there's always something to do for the company, right? There's no doubt about it. So it's really important that you set a routine and you have certain habits to force you to kind of take a step back, see the forest from the trees, be sane. Whether it's going for a walk, you go and do an exercise, like, exercise, you walk your dog, you go meditate, go painting, kite surfing, doesn't matter what it is. You have to have that one habit that is really important. The one thing that I've always maintained, and people who know me well know this, and my team knows this, I always say that Friday nights for me are off limits. I don't do Friday nights because that's the time that I've committed that I have to spend with my family. So I will work on Saturdays, I'll work on Sundays, I'll work Mondays to Fridays as it was Friday nights. You want to find me in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon, I'll juggle things around, I'll make it work. But Friday night, I'm off limits. Don't call me, don't find me. I'm with my family. And that, yeah, and I think that has really helped me, I think, keep sane, because if you're always stuck in that work all the time, you lose your perspective. And that's not why you're building a business. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's some good advice. Really good advice. Um,
Oh, thanks.
could you give us a crash course on
Oh,
what makes a successful founder?
oh, I mean, there's so much, I think, really great advice out there about this. And I hope to just share my own perspective on it in a certain way. Hopefully, that could be interesting or useful to some people.
Mm,
So, I think that successful founders have, really three essential qualities, and that's vision, resilience, and the ability to build remarkable teams. I think these three are really, really important. You need to have vision, you need to have resilience, and you need to be able to build a remarkable team to scale because you can't do everything by yourself. And so maybe we'll start with vision. So vision isn't just about having a good idea. It's about seeing the connections where others don't and having conviction when everyone thinks you're crazy. Like I do that all the time, right? And you got to have a really thick skin about that too. And I mean, when you talk to investors, to your partners, to your clients, you're like, this is where we want to be. So you got to trust that we're going to get there. And this is where we are now. But I've given you the vision, right? And we will get there. So, in a sense, for us, with Chat and Build, what's really exciting for us is that we've really brought a bit of that vision into reality, but we know that there's so many more things that could be really exciting about how AI can transform the future of work, the future of productivity, the future of creativity. Because, in a certain sense, if coding can become commoditized, what really separates anyone from everyone else? It's creativity and ideas, and that's something that AI may not have in abundance. But that's a topic for another day, right? I would say that resilience is really important to be a successful founder, 100%, because the journey is really brutal, and you would face this constant rejection. You will face technical challenges, moments of doubt, even for yourself. But you got to pick yourself up every day and just show up. And, for me, if I didn't have my own habits to ground me, it would have been very, very difficult. So you have to find your own sustainable intensity. And I think last but not least, in a certain sense, if I have to really sum it up, you need to build a really exceptional team. And I've been very fortunate to assemble people from companies like, PayPal, Binance, Standard Chartered Bank, IBM, Hashkey Capital as well. So they believe in our vision and they've been helping out and really doing a lot of things that have made a difference. So no founder succeeds alone, and you have to be humble enough to hire people that are better than you. That's always what I think that was what David Ogilvy used to say, right? Hire a company of giants and you become a giant, right? And hire them in specific domains and everybody will succeed. And you have to create an environment where everyone can thrive. Yeah.
yeah, no, you're completely right. I mean, obviously, the last point there is close to my heart. Being in recruitment, helping founders build
Mm,
teams and allowing them to kind of give up ownership of certain parts of the company to people that they really trust, and uh, being able to find those people is difficult. Really, you've got
mm,
to really know what you're looking for, and really either have the ability to go out to the market to find those people, or
mm.
know who to work with, who can find them for you. I
Yeah.
guess. Um,
Yeah.
what's
Exactly.
um what's your views on starting a business as a co-founder or as a solo founder? Because I speak to
Mm.
people on both sides, and obviously you didn't mention it in those two things there, but I wonder how important is it in your view, co-founder, solo founder? What's your thoughts?
I've done both. So I will
Okay.
tell you what the answer is. Well, it's a very personal decisions because it's not just from my perspective. I would say that I've seen both models work and fail. So it really depends on what you are. So let me give you some ideas around that. So for Chat and Build and Pivotal, I started as a solo founder, but I very quickly built out my core leadership team with domain expertise. So what's worked for us is having very clear decision rights. So there are areas where I'm the final decision maker, and then there are areas where I completely defer to the team leads to go and conquer. right? So that it allows me to really focus on things that are important for us right now when we're in the early stage, like narrative building, the product, finding PMF, being able to reach out and talk directly to our users. These are areas that I get very involved in. Now,
Mhm.
if you go on the co-founder route, what's really important is, even though you might think, oh, it's good to share the burden, it's good to have that, sparring partner, at the back of your mind, it's always about having a support system, right? So I go back to the idea that you need to have a really strong leadership team and a really good support network and have your routine and your habits. So if you have a co-founder, the alignment on values and vision is non-negotiable, 100%, because technical disagreements can be easy to resolve, but the fundamental differences in why you're building what you're building and what you need to do about the business, that's when things fall apart. So if you're solo, you need to be exceptionally good at building that support system, advisors, investors, early team members that can challenge your thinking. You may not always you may not always like what you're hearing, but you know that it's good for you. It's sort of like eating the bitter medicine, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and the danger for the solo founders is getting stuck in your own perspective. So that's what I think will make the difference for solo founders. So there's no right answer, I think, but I think you have to be honest about your strengths and weaknesses and build around your gaps, whether that's with the co-founders or the early hires.
Yeah, because it's difficult, right? To find, as you said, you've got to find someone who really believes in the idea as much as you do, or maybe believes in the problem as much
Mm,
as you do. So you can fall in love with the problem and try and find out the solution. But I guess also
mm,
then finding someone who shares the same values as you, like has the same vision, that kind of thing that's a really difficult thing to
yeah,
find.
yeah,
Um,
100%. Yeah.
and if I was, say, if someone was starting again, like where do you think how do they start that journey? Like if they were thinking, right, I either want to go solo founder or co-founder, and they've gone, I want to go down the co-founder route. Where
Mm,
does someone go to find a co-founder? Do you just hit up
mm,
communities, for example? If we're talking about Web3 and blockchain, do they hit up communities
mm,
with similar like-minded people and just have a chat with loads of people? Do you have any tips that you can
mm.
maybe share on that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say that when I started Bolt OS with my co-founder, and that was 7 years ago, I mean, we met through mutual friends, and we've known each other for a while. At that point in time, we started talking about this and that, what the problems were with with media consumption and streaming, and that was when we went, oh my god, let's try and solve this problem together. So that was kind of like the old-fashioned way of doing it, right? I think
Yeah.
right now, because this is like 7 years on in a certain sense, right, 8 years on rather, um what's really, I think, quite interesting is that you can try and build an MVP anytime, right? And then if you want to find a co-founder, I think again it's about, I think, assembling it from within your support system. So if you are a solo founder and you build a support system, with advisors, investors, or whatsoever, I think bit by bit you'll realize, okay, there may be a gap where I'm not very good in BD, or maybe I'm not very good technically speaking, or I'm not very good operationally speaking, right? I mean, these are, I would say, the three big areas where having a co-founder could be very useful, so that if you're the visionary product founder type, you stick to that lane, and someone else is going to do all the operational stuff but is the co-founder and helps you drive the business vision. So I think that's when things would become very interesting and useful, especially if you can draw from within your existing support system. I don't know if it's necessarily about going to, say, a community meetup and then meeting someone. I mean, things could also happen that way, sort of like, I guess, modern day dating, right, in a certain sense. What I can tell you for sure, though, which is really really important, is that between founders, co-founders, and whatsoever, it's like getting into a marriage. You got to date before you get married, and like it or not, you're going to be together, stuck on this journey for a very very long time, depending on what your desired outcome for the business is going to be, right? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to let it continue on? Do you want to pivot it to something else? You don't know. So I like to joke that before you get married to your co-founder, you need to decide what the divorce is going to look like. Otherwise, it's going to be a very painful process. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. No, yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's a difficult thing for any. yeah founder to decide really. But I think you're right. Like trying to choose someone from within your trusted network who really complements your set
Mm,
of skills, or maybe has attributes that you don't, is yeah the right way to go.
thank you.
Is there anything that you think people should be aware of about the industry that we're in, like before they join it? Obviously, I speak to people all the time who want to found new projects. They want to, launch a new startup in Web3, but they don't necessarily have the experience here already. Um, any thoughts on what people should know about the industry, or in your opinion, what they need to know
Yeah.
about the industry before joining it?
Well, I would say that one of my first loves is always Web3 and blockchain, you know, and this was from way back, right? So I've kind of seen the evolution when, you know, blockchain communities were starting out, and the ethos, the values, and the excitement on what it was going to be reminds me of, all the AI craze today, and that's why I'm in it. You know what I mean? So I would say that fundamentally, whether it was 8, 9 years ago versus now, the most effective way into blockchain isn't applying through the job boards. It's about becoming an active participant in the ecosystem. That is 100% true. I mean, you can try and apply for a job through LinkedIn. You can try and get good referrals and everything else. But I think when you become a very active participant in that particular blockchain ecosystem, and you contribute to community discussions, you attend events, you build small projects, and you share your learnings publicly, that would definitely help you get that new job in blockchain, even if you think that you may not have any experience. And it is open to anyone, which is the fantastic bit, right? I mean, when I've looked for people to join our teams, whether it was my previous startup or even now, the people that always caught our attention weren't necessarily those with the most impressive resumes. Of course, I've highlighted a few that did have impressive resumes, but the ones that always caught my attention were the ones that were already engaged with our community. They have tried our products, they have thoughtful and meaningful discussions about them, and they clearly understand our vision. So these kind of people we love, and we would always have time and space for them, in our core team. I would say that if you come from very traditional tech and you want to get into the blockchain industry, I think it's important to emphasize the transferable skills, but show that you've done your homework, right? So you got to learn the terminology, to understand the key projects in the space, and form opinions on where things are heading. So you don't have to be a DeFi degen and hunt for coins on pump.fun, but you need to understand, I think, the psychology of why people do that, why these sort of trends have emerged. I mean, I can give you an example. One of our incoming new team members, she used to basically run a lot of these integration work at Standard Chartered Bank, right? So, and she wants to do a lot more in the blockchain industry, and I can fundamentally see how this can be, because we can basically work together for API integrations and a lot of that to become transferable from not just the blockchain but even in the AI space. So that was what she shared, and I was like, oh yeah, that's actually really interesting. I would love the kind of idea and integration for us, right? So I think the one fundamental final thing I would say about the blockchain space is, if you understand the terminology and you understand the tech, you don't have to worry if you're not a deep tech expert, because the important thing is that you need to have the soft skills. And blockchain and the network in this industry is a very, very, very small space. So adaptability, communication, and collaboration are just as valuable as technical expertise. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where uh, building a personal brand comes in as well. Because if you don't necessarily have the experience in the blockchain space already, but you have transferable skills, it's, well, can you write social media posts about your experience, relating it to how it can affect things in Web3, or can you talk
Yeah.
about trends that are going on in the industry and how the skills that you have directly correlate to that, or like how you would handle certain situations or certain problems, or your thoughts on certain things that are happening and that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's super important as well, because I guess you as a prospective employer would look at their online footprint and go, well, they haven't worked in the space, but I can clearly see that they're interested in it and they're so passionate about it, because it's all they talk about all over their Twitter account
Mm.
or LinkedIn or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Because the amount of people that I've spoken to who say they're passionate about Web3, and then I go, oh, okay, cool. Like, can you talk me about some of the stuff that you've done? Like what chains do you use? You ever bought an NFT? Have you ever traded
Yeah,
anything or swapped anything or bridged anything? Like talk me through it.
yeah.
And they go, no, I don't want to put my own money
Mm,
into that risk. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, you're not
it's,
that passionate about it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You gotta eat your own dog food. That's what I always like to say. Eat your own dog food. Yeah, actually, that was a term that we used to use at Twitter. Eat your own dog food. It was quite funny. We had
Really?
a whole, yeah, we had a whole internal system, and it was called like dog food. Basically, it was quite funny. Yeah, fun fact. Not bird feed.
That's
Actually, I always wonder why it wasn't called bird feed, but it was called dog food.
great.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, no, I mean that what you said there about breaking into the communities. That's great advice for someone who's looking to get into the space. Um,
Mm.
how do you? Again, might be quite difficult to answer, but how do you choose the communities to get involved in, and how do you choose, or where do you go to find things that are super interesting in Web three?
Me? Uh, that's also a very good question because I think if your entire worldview is determined by an algorithm based on what you've most commonly engaged with on X on Twitter, it becomes very dangerous as well. So if you follow two DeFi degens and then you go into a whole cycle of the debauchery on meme coins and God knows whatever, then it
Yeah.
becomes also quite not too good, right? I actually have my own social listening dashboard. Yeah.
Okay.
So it helps me get some perspective on what's happening out there. So I kind of identify key topics and influences in the space. I have it for years now, basically. So it helps me kind of take a look at what's interesting in the space and what's going on. And it helps me not get sucked into the tunnel vision of the same sort of community because you can kind of see the overlapping topics, right? I mean, and narratives that emerge. So a new layer two comes out and suddenly the whole narrative has got layer twos and abstraction and ethereum and all of that. So if you want to take a step back and take a look at what other gems there are out there, you have to do some sort of social listening. Now you don't have to do a social listening tool like I do. Even something very very simple like paying for TweetDeck Pro would be good enough. Highlighting key topics, filtering out keywords would actually give you a lot of perspective more than you can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. What's the name of the tool that you use, if you remember?
Actually, I use Brandwatch.
Oh, really?
That was
Okay.
yeah, yeah, I do still use Brandwatch. And I mean I love it. That was what actually brought me to bring the company, to Asia because I was like, wow, this is such a great tool. It's got to be everywhere. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Well, yeah, I mean that's super good advice. That's definitely something that I can take away and implement. Yeah, the amount of time I spend just scrolling through crypto Twitter, looking at what's everyone tweeting, what they're talking about, and that kind of stuff. I don't know why I've never thought to look for a social listening tool that will just analyze all the trends going on. That's a much more simple idea than wasting all of my life scrolling through crypto Twitter endlessly. Um,
Yes. Yes. Well, you might be interested in this then because as part of Chat and Build, I've been playing around with a few ideas on bringing some of this as a separate app, but part of Chat and Build basically. Yeah. So you can
nice.
subscribe to and take a look at stuff. But yeah, you never know. Maybe you can subscribe to that too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
I'll check it out definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so if so that's some advice if someone is stepping into the industry and they're looking to explore like how to get in and
Mm.
where to find what they're interested in. What do you do if you're already here? So you're already here, you've got a role that you really enjoy, you don't want to be a founder of your own project, you want to build a good career for yourself. Have you got any advice for someone on how they can do that, or maybe how they can make themselves indispensable to the founders and the projects that they're working with?
Yeah. I think the number one quality that I always look for is grit. Well, actually, two grit and being adaptable because tech changes super fast. It accelerates so fast, things change so quickly. Narratives, I wouldn't say it's narratives, but I think the ongoing thesis of the day can shift so quickly as we've seen, right? So what I think is really important is that to kind of further career in a general sense, not just in blockchain but in tech in general, is that you have to be very platform agnostic in your thinking. Specific chains and tech will evolve, but the fundamental principles of decentralization would always endure, and that's what I've always been fundamentally very passionate about. Um, and I think it's important to be able to build that expertise that transfers across platforms rather than betting everything on a single chain. That's also one thing that's very important in our space, as we've seen as well, the importance of diversification. I think it's also important to find your unique intersection of skills. So I think the most interesting opportunities are always at the crossroads of different disciplines. So you're talking about DeFi, AI, NFTs, and gaming, governance and community building. I think those are where a lot of the really interesting projects and communities could arise. And in information, I mean, fundamentally, information doesn't exist to perpetuate itself, right? But as tools to interpret the world in new ways. Um, a lot of what I've seen in blockchain and various communities over the years is that um, when a good BD person or community person moves to another community, they are able to bring their own community with them, right? And it's fundamentally very very important. So how they've been able to do that. I mean, of course, some of them have got like cult like status, as you can imagine, but I think it's really important to be able to cultivate those genuine relationships across projects. And the blockchain community is very very small and interconnected. I've seen, like, whether you're if you're raising for a round, if you're trying to work with a project, one call here, one telegram ping, it makes a huge difference. I've seen that time and time and time and time again. I mean, for myself, for others, etc. And your reputation actually follows you everywhere. So you got to focus on being someone that people genuinely want to work with again. I like you a lot, so I definitely work with you again for sure, no problem. Love to always keep in touch and hang out. Yeah, so I would say that the most successful people in this space are those who can synthesize knowledge across domains and build bridges between communities. Like, don't I think don't give in to hysteria and over FOMO, you know, and try and look for the signals amongst the noise as well. That's also really, really important.
Makes sense. That makes
Mhm.
sense. So, so the people that do well, then, just to summarize, so people with drive, people who have that adaptability to spot, where they need to change, or maybe a switch in narrative or a switch in direction that needs to happen that can look across into fairly different ecosystems, and then someone who has the ability to build a lot of trust and really look after their own reputation and develop that reputation
Mm,
within the industry. Like, they're the people that tend to do well.
yeah, that's true. That
Yeah.
is very, very true.
Nice. Okay. Thank you. So what about then if you're a founder? I mean, you are a founder. So
Yes.
what advice would you share for people looking to hire into their teams? Like, say if someone hasn't built a team before, they don't know where
Mm,
to start. How do they go about that process? They know they
mm,
need to hire, but how do they
mm.
find the best types of people for them?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I always like to say this, that when you start your company, you need to know what your company's values systems are and what you stand for. So for us, we value things like curiosity, resilience, and a genuine belief in the areas of AI and blockchain, right? And we actually really look out for these qualities, because if those are not there, it's not going to be a good fit, no matter how amazing and how technically competent and how skillful they are. So you got to start with the clarity about your values and culture, because information can be taught, knowledge can be, accumulated, but your values and your culture is not something that can be taught in one day. Um, I would say that you have to be really specific about the problems that you're hiring someone to solve, and not just the skills that you think you need. So we've always had much better results hiring for problem solving ability rather than specific technical stacks as well. Uh, I mean, my I like to say that, when you look for an engineer, for example, I mean, now with all of this, AI coding and the rise of democratized software creation, it's important, for example, within engineering, that you hire someone that understands fundamentally things like security, system architecture. That's really, really important, right? Versus just hiring because, oh, they know Next.js, and this guy knows QA or whatsoever. That's a very different thing. um,
Yeah.
I would say it'd be good if you can create a remarkable candidate experience. This is where, even for us, we're still learning and adapting as we go along the ways. And by the way, when I kind of share a lot of these ideas and thoughts, we're not perfect. We're still learning. We're still doing a lot of stuff. And these are ideals that I hope, to kind of not just continually do, but also realize into the future. So, but what I would say is that the best talent always has options, and I'm sure you're really experienced in the recruitment industry and you understand that too. Their interview process is their first experience of your culture, right? So we have to make sure that our candidates that we try to interview are able to interact with multiple team members and get a genuine feel for how we work. So I would say, yeah, hiring is just the beginning, because then after that you got to invest into onboarding, creating clear plans and paths for growth, and the right talent always wants to keep evolving, right? And you got to make sure you provide that environment.
I really like that you talked about the candidate experience there as
Mm,
being such a key thing. I think that's something that a lot of projects in this space haven't quite mastered yet. Like, there's a lot of ghosting. There's a real lack of feedback that gets given
yeah.
to people in this industry
Mm,
when they're going for roles and things. And I don't think I don't think people, or some people in, I don't think some projects or some people in the industry understand how much that can negatively impact you in the future. Your employer
definitely.
brand is massive. In 3, 4, 5 years, when you're trying to scale and hire tons of different people, but a couple of years earlier, there's a bunch of people who are influential in such a small industry have had
Mm,
a really bad hiring experience. Well, bad news travels faster than good news, and I think people would be surprised like how quickly that gets around such a small industry. Um,
exactly right.
like, I know people who have applied for positions, and then they've chatted to their mate who said, "Oh yeah, I applied there and I had a really bad experience. I got ghosted," and then that person's gone, "Oh, actually, okay, then I won't continue with my application," and they've withdrawn it.
Yep.
So it can have a massive, massive impact. So I really like that you talked about that, because I think that's something that we need to improve on across the
Mm.
industry.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, I believe in it, and I think we can do better in that as well. But that's definitely something I believe in. Yeah.
No, that's good to hear.
Mm.
Christel, thank you for sharing all of your advice today. There's one question that I like to finish up on. I like to ask everyone who comes on the show.
Yep.
Knowing what you know now about
Mm.
technology, about Web3, about leadership, if you could go back to the start of your career, what advice would you have for your younger self?
Drink less Red Bull. I'm joking. Maybe not. Maybe not that. Yeah. I mean, wow, that's a really good one. I was actually just thinking to myself that I've been working now for, it's crazy when I think about it, for more than coming to 20 years. That's crazy, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'll tell my younger self to trust your intuition and to embrace being different. Too many of us, we try to fit into a mold, and I think that's actually really bad. You gotta try and embrace being different, because all of us are different. Um, and I've shared my own experiences when I tried to fit into a mold and I couldn't, and that's why I did. I broke my scholarship bond, and that led me to all of the things that you know were really good for me in the end. Whether it was working for the advertising agency and then going to Twitter. So I think being able to look for the most, I mean, in a sense, everybody always says, "Oh, you're so lucky. You've had all these opportunities." But in truth is, as it's not the cliche. You have to make your own luck, but you always have to be well prepared for luck to find you too, and that's important. And when you're able to follow that unique perspective, that will bring you very, very far. And I like to kind of always share this. It's one of my favorite quotes by James Cameron, that no important innovation was ever achieved without risk, right? Because failing is always an option, but fear is not. And that has always characterized my own journey. That people always sometimes, in a sense, they be afraid to do something because they're scared of failing, or and people are like, oh, I'm scared of getting cancelled and this and that. If you're a good person, don't be afraid to fail. It's true. If you haven't done
Yeah.
anything wrong, you haven't done anything illegal, all of the above, you know, if you want to succeed, you have to be able to fail. That is true because no important innovation was ever achieved without risk. So I always like to say that failing is always an option, but fear is not. This actually came from James Cameron, one of my, whenever I feel a bit down, I always reference back to his TED talk, and I get that instant lift again because it's quite a good TED talk that I highly recommend people to watch. And that would be probably the TED talk that I will ask my younger self to rewatch when I'm 18 or 19 and get re-inspired all over again. I watched it when I was I think 22, 23. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was so blown away. I kept rewatching it like a thousand times. Must have made the TED Talk channel lots of advertising revenue actually. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna watch that one myself. I don't think I've seen it
Yeah.
before, so yeah, I'm gonna go back and watch that one. Watch that one
Yeah,
myself.
it's
Um,
titled "When I Was a Boy," when I was a young boy. So it basically talks
okay.
about how James Cameron went on this crazy. He was always passionate. I'll just give you a tiny blurb because that was actually a really good story, but I won't spoil the whole thing for you. But basically, talks about how, he went from he learned how to dive because he always wanted to basically um, visit the Titanic. And he
Yeah.
somehow managed to basically commission this movie so that he could actually visit the Titanic. Even before that, he was making watch ads and doing all sorts of stuff so that he could visit the Titanic. And the rest, as you can say, is history. Yeah, very, very good story.
No, that's nice. I'm gonna go listen to it.
Yeah,
Um, but Crystal, thank you very very much for taking the time to have a conversation today. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for sharing
thank
your
you.
journey and talking us through tons of advice. If anyone's listening and they really want to understand a bit more about you and your journey and what you guys are building, is the best place to go on Twitter, directly to your guys' website? Like, where's the best place that they can find more information?
Yeah, sure, sure. So, I mean, you can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Lady XTL, like Crystal, but like Christmas, but XTL, basically.
Mhm.
And you can also visit chatandbuild.com. That's our main platform. Very excited to share more with you guys about what we're doing there. Yeah.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, thank you very much,
Thank you.
and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much.